Joining me live, my political panel, Liberal Senator Andrew Bragg from the Labor Party, Matt Thistlethwaite. Gentlemen, thanks both for your time. Beginning with you, Andrew, the PM today emphasising, well, we can't see a situation in which the prison sentence would be used for someone trying to get back from India. Why then drop it out to the media, confirm it with a midnight press release? Why do that if this was not some sort of emphasis from the government?
Well, Tom, as you know, we're following the advice of the health agencies here and putting in place the strongest possible deterrents. And these are very strong deterrents, and it's regrettable that they're necessary. But we are trying to do our best to address the situation of the transmission that's been occurring in places like Howard Springs. And I know that there's very strong community feeling about this in the Indian and Australian community. So it will only be until the 15th of May.
Right, but let's just clear this up. The health advice was not the deterrent. The health advice was stopping the flights. The government's action was to, via the media, get out this message, there'll be prison sentences. You need to own that, don't you? You can't walk away from that the way the Prime Minister's trying to today.
I think they are very strong statements, and they are strongly worded. And I think that is because it is a grave situation. And I think the data that's coming out of, again, Howard Springs is that already that has had the effect that it's been desired, and there is now a lower level of cases in that facility. So we need to make sure we don't. But
I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about that is the message being put out there. The Prime Minister, clearly the government put out there on Friday, we're going to be really tough on this, prison sentences. Today the Prime Minister's saying, I can't see them being used. You've been burnt by this, your government. You're trying to walk away from the deterrent side of things, the threat.
It is very strong. There's no question. And that is a judgment that's been made, and that is a temporary judgment until the 15th of May.
Matt, what about you? Do you disagree with anything that's happened? Not the wording, but the actions, the flight ban, the deterrent. Does Labor disagree with anything here?
Tom, the number one job of the Australian government is to keep Australians safe and do their best to keep Australians safe. And that includes providing safe passage home for Australians when they've got an Australian passport and they want to return home. And at the moment, there's 9,000 Australians that have been abandoned by this government that are waiting in India. Now, I understand that this decision's been made because there was health advice that said that if we continue to have the arrivals come in at the same pace from India, then the hotel quarantine system will be overrun and we'll have another outbreak. The problem with that is, Tom, that this government was warned 9 months ago that the hotel quarantine system wouldn't cope and that they should be putting in place larger measures like Howard Springs, like what the Victorian government's talking about now, to take the pressure off hotel quarantine. So the fact that 9,000 people are stranded overseas is in India is the doing of this government, because they've ignored that advice.
You can talk about what's happened in the past. I just want to clarify on this point. Will you say, for example, I know Labor agrees on the flight stopping. What about talk and dropping it out there that there would be possibility of prison sentences? Was that a mistake?
Well, that's in the regulation. It was probably a bit heavy-handed to focus on that. It was probably a bit heavy-handed to focus on that, and I think that the Prime Minister's probably implicitly recognised that he's made a mistake in doing that, because he's now trying to walk away from it, given the backlash that's occurred from the Australian Indian diaspora. And I think that backlash is quite reasonable, because many of those people that are stranded in India have been trying to get home for months. So I've got constituents in the community that I represent, that I've spoken to, have been trying to get home from India for well in advance of 6 months. But whenever they book a flight, it gets cancelled, and they're told that if you book a business class flight, you might be able to get on. And that's all to do with the fact that the government ignored the advice about hotel quarantine and didn't go down the path of the advice of Jane Halton in setting up these bigger centres.
Howard Springs has been expanded, but looks like they need more. We'll see. Victoria might be a chance after what the PM's just had to say. Just wanted to ask you, Andrew Bragg, about the book you've just released, Baraja, it means tomorrow in the language of the Yuin people in New South Wales South Coast there. You want the tomorrow to include recognition of the Constitution and also 27th of January as a public holiday. Do you think that would work well, the dual public holiday? And what's the reception been amongst your colleagues so far?
Well, that's the book, Tom, Baraja. It's I guess my effort to try and bring together a plan for reconciliation, because for as long as I've been alive, we've talked about these concepts about reconciliation and recognition. John Howard started the debate on constitutional recognition back in 2007. And so I think we want to try and get something done here. My view would be that having a national holiday to recognise the contribution of Indigenous people to Australia would be appropriate and desirable. I think most people would be happy with a second public holiday in January. And the reception so far has actually been pretty good. I think people are keen to have the discussion.
Matt, we don't have much time, but is this something, I mean, bipartisanship would be so good to achieve here. It seems to have split of late between the two parties on this matter. Would you like to see the two come together?
Definitely would, Tom. I think it's long overdue for bipartisanship on this issue. And finally, listening to what Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians want. I think that's the great missing piece in the Parliament's response to the Uluru Statement from the Heart, that this government just ignores the pleas of First Nations leaders saying, when are you going to stop ignoring us and actually listen to what we want? And that's detailed in the Uluru Statement from the Heart, that they want a constitutionally enshrined voice to Parliament. I'm happy to agree with Andrew on this and work with him on it. My question for Andrew is, if Labor put a bill to the Parliament or sought to amend the government's bill to establish the voice, to have a referendum at the next election and enshrine it in the Constitution, will you work with us to support it? I think the Australian people want that to occur, and I'd be happy to work with Andrew on that.
It'll have to be a rhetorical question for now. We're already over. But Andrew, well, have you got it in 5 seconds for me, Andrew?
Yes.
Oh, there you go. Simple. Andrew,
Let's work on it.
Matt, sounds good. We've achieved something today. We'll talk again soon.